Hello everybody and welcome to another episode. I'm Tyler Edlin, illustrator, concept artist, and instructor. Today I'm going to be going back to the fundamentals and talking about the difference and the importance of line of action versus form of action. So I feel a lot of people already are going to be aware, at least to some degree, what the line of action is, but I'll do a little recap right here. It's certainly more commonly known than what the form of action is. So line of action, associate that with character drawing, character design, figure drawing. And it's really a great key ingredient to making your characters look more natural or more dynamic. Think of the line of action as an imaginary line running down a character's spine. Now this line of action is often a curved line, implying some sort of movement. As opposed to drawing a straight line, gives your character's pose more force and attitude, which in turn aids in making your character's poses more visually interesting to the viewer. So this will in turn lead to good, realistic posing, which shows what the character is doing. It is used for conveying their emotions and feelings. Is something being done happily? Is something being done confidently? Or is something more sad? This, of course, does take the character's body type into account, and it just should feel natural and not as forced. When done well, this should add some appeal to your characters, right? It's going to add a rhythm and flow straight against a curve, and it can lead from one pose to another and tells a story without any in-betweens and annotations. We just observed how a combination of straight and curved lines can create appeal through rhythm, movement, and the flow that they are arranged in. Now, creating an environment in a readable way is easy enough. Heck, look at this drawing that took all of 20 seconds to draw. It's understandable, but is it good? I'd say surely not. Now, creating an environment that conveys your idea and in an appealing way that resonates with the viewer, now that's where the challenge really lies. So, as the same with characters, I'd say straight lines are considered more fast and direct. There's more action with them, and curved lines are a bit more slow and calming. In most cases, I do try to balance a composition using both judiciously. So next, let's look at a few examples from my students' work and see how we can improve the form of action. All right, in this first example, let's look at what potentially this image is about. I would say that it's probably about this building. Maybe it has a secondary element, with this castle on the cliff. And I would say that because there's a lot of things in one way or another pointing to or framing this object here. Now there are some things as well, like these tree shapes just kind of pointing up and toward this, and this is right in our face where there's a lot of detail as well. So if we're talking form of action, that's kind of like the contours of what the geometry would be, and that's why with like landscapes and environments in general, they're really good for pushing the eye. So see, like these are kind of going like that, right? Then they hit this wall and they're then kind of flowing up like this. So there's a lot of energy kind of pushing us toward this as well. But where it's kind of failing for me is like there's nothing reinforcing that on the top side, and this image is kind of riding that top as well. Like so it's not this as an element doesn't have a lot of room to breathe. So in my iteration or revision of this, I was downscaling this whole segment, leaving for like more information over here. I altered, the shape and flow of the beach, and then added, larger and simpler background mountains. So if we were to trace the form of action, again with this scene, right, we have a lot of lines starting to converge like this. And you can think of this like a wireframe mode in like a 3D software, but it's just generally like what the movement of the shapes and forms are doing and where they're pushing. So I went to add a subtle bit of an emphasis on the top to make a bit of a trifecta of information. But see, even if this does become the primary focal point, there's a lot more kind of boxing in and framing it now. And then the lines are also supporting that as well. So this was an earlier work in progress from one of my current students. She's doing really great with this now. But like this was like the first pass that I saw at this. And this scene is clearly about this information right here. I think there's a lot going on right, to really push and guide the viewer here. But when I think of something like this as the focal point, I think of it like the main actor on the stage, so that if I'm going to reinforce this, I really want to give it a whole platform to be celebrated on and to be embellished. So what I did in my iteration on this was zoom out, quite a bit, give it a little bit more wiggle room underneath. So I can use underneath as well to like really sculpt out the shapes of, like, let's say if this is a beach, right, it's a beach cove cave, like we can sculpt out different shapes with the water, with the sand, to help guide the viewer's eye and really set this up. So this, my little iteration on this has a bit of color as well, but I really tried to make every shape and element and, of course, form really emphasize a lot of that. So see, like, these are kind of soft, right? They're lyrical. They're going like that. These are, it's off to the side a bit more, so it's a little bit more straight and direct, right? These lines are kind of going to flow up like that. And, of course, I think the rocks are largely doing that, to themselves. So like we have some undersides here, here, here. They go thick to thin, short to long, and there's just a whole variety of that, really giving this as a focal element the room and space that it commands and that it deserves. And we're also echoing the various negative spaces around it by having different eyes for the viewer's eye to go in, to come out. We're using the rule of odds, where we're creating different odd numbers of elements that are reoccurring and going back in depth and scale, and they're also kind of surrounding, part of the focal point as well. So that would be, in my case here, a great direction to take, what is a lovely idea. Now, some of my students opt to try to jump into 3D, and I think this was a case where they jumped into 3D too soon without really working out a lot of what the composition is, and that's what we're going to spend the remainder of this demonstration doing. So while this is like set up kind of like in a standard rule of thirds sort of way, right? If we break this into thirds, it kind of works that like this is all blocked in here, this is right here, but okay, so if it's using rule of thirds and it's kind of arranged all right, where is it not reaching its full potential? Because I don't want to say whether it's right or whether it's wrong, because design is largely subjective, but I rather say there's something better or something worse, and I do think there are better solutions for this. And then that would be in the form, because the form here is very direct and it's going like that. So the eye is, without a doubt going right to this very directly, but it's lacking that dance with the viewer. We're not taking them around, in, over, and through the composition. It's just like too much in your face too soon. Let's build up a little that anticipation. Let's really embellish the form of action on this piece. So it's no secret, I love a good castle on a mountaintop. I could draw those all day. So let's dive into this, put my experience to use here, and try to salvage this student's composition and to improve the general idea there without really kind of changing what it's about. So I blew up the composition a little bit. Like I selected what was important, and I just made it a little bit larger in terms of the real estate that it's taking up on the canvas. I want it to be a bit louder, a little bit more bold. So right now this is currently the design that it was there. It's this very simple shape. So what I want to do with form is to start gradually integrating it in a little bit subtly from the foreground right, and bringing it right up to that castle to give a path. Like, my general question would be, or was to the students, like, how do people go to and from this place? So let's make it a little more grounded, a little more physically tangible in terms of the believability. So now I'm going to just start going a bit crazy, scribbling shapes and colors and lines using very quick colors as well. I like to work that way because it's fairly non-destructive for me. I'm not trying to make a pretty drawing starting right off. And I have no problem kind of tossing anything away or drawing over something at this stage. It should be fairly disposable until something is working. And how I've trained my mind to think over the years is to, like, composition needs to work in regards to simple shapes. So I'm basically selecting these shapes and making them work and reworking them again till I can find an interesting arrangement of what these shapes. Now, for me, it doesn't really matter at this stage what those shapes are. Like, I drew them green. These could be grass grassy plains, they could be, but they're a top surface. They could be snow, they could be sand, they could almost be whatever. That part is not important. More importantly is the shapes and the paths and the movement they're creating at this stage. So I'm already liking how they're arranged. They're fairly dynamic. There's large, there's medium, there's smalls, and I'm just kind of going out to highlight that with some of these other forms. So see, it feels a lot more interconnected, and it's starting to feel a little bit more dynamic and lively. That's my goal very early on in this. So at this stage, I have no idea what to do with the right top side and the left side. So I'm trying to just draw very simple lines, so maybe I can build compositions around them. And of course, flipping the composition is an old trick that really works as well. Now, what I'm doing here to add a few smaller shapes, I'm just scribbling them over, like maybe they're larger stones or something, but I'm also overlapping many of the shapes around them. Overlaps is a great way to, increase the depth in a scene, to kind of trick the viewer's eye to seeing, what is in the distance and what is closer up. So I'm doing that, and now I'm like, okay, what if there was a path in this scene, a literal path for characters to traverse? I'm just kind of blocking that out with some yellows and tans to just kind of get a feel, right, to how that could look. And now I'm more or less happy with how that could work. We decided to take that course of action. But yeah, now I want to get back to really work up what these remaining mountain shapes are, because now we have the main castle structure in there. It feels fairly grounded in the setting. So let's, as I say, design that setting around this castle to really emphasize every line and form to help embellish that idea. So just having a general mountain cut right through it is a sure enough way that the eye will cross it from multiple paths, right? So it's going to look something like this. A lot of nice, swift but casual movements going to and from. I also want to add a little bit of weight to the right side of the composition at this stage. So I want to add, just more draw distance with the mountains and stuff. And I'll redraw, like you see me doing here a couple times. I'll draw a singular line over and over again. I'm going to try to find, small, large, medium, smalls. I'm trying to find the rhythm of these lines, right? As I mentioned earlier, I like to have hard edges, soft edges, long, and short ones as well. The more I kind of change up and make these rhythms feel dynamic, the more lively my scenes tend to look. And that's really what I'm trying to get down to here with this revision here. I figure maybe we can add in another shape, down, wedging them in between these mountains here, and that will add more movement as well, right? To constantly change up the acceleration of these mountains. I can create more overlaps, right? If I break down a singular shape like that, subdividing it into fewer pieces or a few more pieces and adding more of that emphasis of that movement as well. But right now it's kind of turning up kind of how I would take it. And this is just like a first revision. Now I'd kind of figure out the sky and design the sky based around the lighting after the fact. But for now, like this, I feel is working good enough that you could really be pushed in a number of directions. And that's what I would do from here if this was my piece. I'd look at what I have established and then just refine it, like getting really in the nitty-gritty of it and nitpicking all the little shapes, all the little curves and stuff. And that can start off just by highlighting the various skeleton of what the shapes are doing right now, kind of like you see here. But anyways, guys, I hope this video helped you. Let me know if you're still struggling with this, or if there's other little topics like this that you want for me to expand upon, and I'd love to hear from you. So take care. And so just to briefly recap what this video was about, contrast ultimately is everything. It's what creates drama and adds interest to our pieces. Straight and curved lines create appeal through rhythm, movement, and flow. And if our design, like we see in the student one down here, doesn't, if there's not a path through the image, if it's hard to read, try to see how you can represent your idea and how the shapes are ultimately going to be forms, three-dimensional forms, to kind of create a three-dimensional read. Because these lines over the forms, they're going to ultimately push, the viewer's eye in various directions based off what their surface is, and it's where they're leading us. Ultimately, we can really find and illustrate our focal points and create that direction. Straight lines are considered a bit faster. They are a great way to contrast up the slower, more methodical curved lines. So how can we design our scene so we can get the viewer's eye around the composition and lead them ultimately to where we want them to look? What it merely comes down to is, what is the scene about? Alright, thank you and take care. Thank you for checking out my video. You can support the channel if you'd like by subscribing, liking, or commenting on my videos. You can find me on the web on Facebook, ArtStation, and Instagram. Those are the social media outlets I utilize. I also teach 2 courses at the Computer Graphics Masters Academy, Architecture Design and the Fundamentals of Design. Feel free to check those out. Now, if the classes aren't for you, I also teach one-on-one. Join the hundreds of students around the world for one-on-one learning, and for more info, just send me an email. Also, feel free to join the Brush Sauce Discord community. There's links below. It's fun. We do weekly hangouts. There's the challenges, and it's a great place to make friends. Take care.